The piercing wail of sirens sliced through the quiet suburban afternoon, shattering the peace of a tree-lined street where children once played and neighbors waved hello. At the heart of the chaos stood Karen Mitchell, a middle-aged woman with a reputation for her unyielding demands, her finger still hovering midair from where she'd just dialed 911. Her voice, shrill and insistent, had summoned the police to the doorstep of John Kennedy, a reserved widower who had been quietly tinkering with his Wi-Fi router on his porch. "He's tampering with the signal," Karen had shrieked into the phone, her face flushed with indignation. "It's disrupting my streaming, and I demand action." What began as a petty neighborhood squabble would soon unravel into a story that left the entire community, and the officers who arrived, stunned, their hearts heavy with unexpected revelations. John Kennedy, a man in his late 50s with silver hair and a perpetually tired expression, had moved to the neighborhood 2 years ago after losing his wife, Margaret, to a long battle with cancer. He was a man of few words, often seen tending to his small garden or sitting on his porch with a cup of coffee, lost in thought. The Wi-Fi issue was a recent obsession for him, a way to stay connected to the world after months of isolation. Margaret had been his everything, his confidant, his laughter, his reason to get up each morning. Her death had left a void so vast that John often found himself talking to her photo, recounting the mundane details of his day as if she were still there. The Wi-Fi project was more than a technical fix, it was a lifeline, a way to stream old movies they'd loved and feel her presence again. But to Karen, it was an affront, a disruption to her perfectly curated life of reality TV marathons and online shopping. Karen, on the other hand, was the neighborhood's self-appointed watchdog. A single mother of 2 teenagers, she had built her identity around control, her sharp tongue a weapon against anyone who crossed her. Her husband had left years ago, leaving her to raise her kids alone, and the stress had hardened her. She saw John's quiet demeanor as aloofness, his solitary habits as suspicious. When her internet flickered that afternoon, she didn't hesitate to blame him, storming over with her phone in hand, demanding he stop meddling with things he didn't understand. John, startled by her outburst, tried to explain that he was just adjusting his own router, but Karen's accusations only grew louder. "You're stealing my bandwidth," she shouted, her voice carrying down the street. Desperate and humiliated, she dialed 911, convinced the police would side with her. When officers Martinez and Carter arrived, their initial reaction was one of mild amusement, another petty dispute in a long day. Martinez, a seasoned cop with a soft spot for underdogs, approached John with a raised eyebrow, while Carter, the younger of the two, took Karen's statement with a notepad in hand. "Ma'am, are you sure this is a police matter?" Carter asked, trying to suppress a grin. But Karen's fury was unrelenting. "He's interfering with my rights," she insisted, her arms crossed tightly. John, meanwhile, stood silently, his hands trembling as he held the router, his eyes downcast. Martinez noticed the man's distress and decided to dig deeper, asking John to step inside for a moment. What they found would change everything. Inside John's modest home, the officers were met with a shrine of sorts. Photos of Margaret lined the walls, her smile frozen in time, surrounded by handwritten notes and mementos. On the coffee table sat an old laptop, open to a video call interface. John had been trying to set up a stable connection to join a grief support group online, a step he'd been too ashamed to take until now. "She was my world," John said quietly, his voice breaking. "I just wanted to hear her voice again through these old recordings, to feel like she's still with me." Martinez's heart sank as he realized the depth of John's pain, while Carter, usually stoic, felt a lump rise in his throat. The router wasn't about bandwidth theft, it was about a man clinging to the last threads of his life. Back outside, Martinez confronted Karen with the truth. "This man isn't your enemy," he said firmly. "He's grieving, and you've turned a misunderstanding into a public spectacle." Karen's bravado faltered as the weight of her actions hit her. Her own struggles, raising her kids, the loneliness of single parenthood, flashed before her eyes, and for the first time, she saw a reflection of her own pain in John's weary face. Ashamed, she muttered an apology, her voice barely audible. But the officers weren't done. They suggested a community meeting, a chance for neighbors to come together and understand each other's burdens. John hesitated, but Martinez encouraged him. "You're not alone in this," he said gently. The meeting, held a week later in the community center, was tense at first. Karen sat in the back, avoiding eye contact, while John stood awkwardly near the front, clutching a photo of Margaret. As he shared his story, his love for her, the silence that followed her death, and his small attempt to reconnect, tears welled up in the room. A young mother spoke of her own loss, a retiree admitted to his isolation, and slowly, the barriers began to crumble. Karen, moved by John's vulnerability, approached him afterward. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I've been so caught up in my own mess, I didn't see yours." John nodded, offering a small smile. "Maybe we can help each other," he suggested, and she agreed to assist with his Wi-Fi setup as a peace offering. Over the next few months, the neighborhood transformed. John and Karen became unlikely friends, bonding over shared dinners and tech troubleshooting. The support group grew, with neighbors checking in on each other, sharing stories, and building a network of care that went beyond Wi-Fi signals. The police officers, touched by the outcome, began volunteering at local community events, inspired by the resilience they'd witnessed. John found solace in these connections, Margaret's memory now a source of strength rather than sorrow. And Karen, softened by her newfound empathy, rediscovered the joy of community she'd lost. By the end, the story left an indelible mark. On a crisp autumn evening, as the neighborhood gathered for a bonfire, John stood with Karen by his side, laughing as her son showed him a new streaming trick. The sirens that once symbolized conflict now echoed faintly in memory, replaced by the warmth of human connection. The message was clear: in the face of pain, understanding and compassion can turn strangers into family, proving that even the smallest acts of kindness can heal the deepest wounds.